Hello Year 3, Mrs Nicholson here with Kid Normal. I'm now reading chapter 24. I'm going to read it in two parts. So chapter 24 part A, Nectar's Nemesis. When Arabella Ribbon bought the factory to set up her robotics business many years ago, she wondered why there was a large tower rising from one side of it. The estate agents who sold it to her claimed that it was because it had previously been a factory that tested lifts, but estate agents tended to lie a lot. Anyway, a tower that was a tall, round tower on the southern end of the building, only accessible by a single set of double doors through which the Super Zeros now crept. A year ago, it had housed nothing much except Arabella's large round office, which was right at the top, because she liked to look out at the view and work out how much of it she could buy. Underneath that was a series of storerooms, and at the very bottom, below ground level, was a large, round, empty area, which, if the estate agent was telling the truth, was where the lifts would plummet into the testing, if the testing didn't go well. But that was many months ago. Since then, the tower had become the private domain of Nectar, hideous genetic freakazoid that he was, and things had changed. If you've ever seen a wasp's nest, here's a quick summary. A load of wasps who get on well decide to set up a home together. So they chew stuff up, then stick it together with their own spit to make an elaborate nest for themselves, usually in the attic of somebody's house. Now, take what we've just told you about wasps and imagine a person doing the same thing. In other words, it really was true. One of the grossest things the Super Zeros had ever seen in their entire lives. Now brace yourselves and let's have a look, shall we? The cardboard, paper, wood, cables and metal that had been stored in the rooms on the tower's lowest floors had been smashed, mashed and in some cases chewed together. They'd been plastered with, yes, Nectar's own sticky mouth juices to line the walls and ceilings, so the rooms and corridors of Nectar's tower didn't look like normal rooms and corridors with nice clean lines and corners where walls, floors and ceilings met each other. Instead, they were rounded like the insides of an intestine or a really expensive film set. It was like walking into another planet. And it really, really stank. You know how bad it smells when a relative, grandmas are the worst offenders, does that thing where they lick their finger and use it to clean your face? Well, take that smell of stale lick and multiply it by 1,000, then add 10. That's the kind of what it smelt like inside the tower that had become Nectar's lair. Remember, he'd been in there sticking stuff together with his spit for the best part of a year. And we don't know about you, but we certainly don't remember him taking a toothbrush with him. The rounded passageways of the nest were dark and creepy looking. As Murph and the rest of the Super Zeros stood in the first chamber, they could see two main routes open to them. One curved upwards, the other down. Once they had been staircases, but now were coated with crispy mush. They looked more like tubes. Don't, for goodness sake, say we have to split up, said Hilda. Murph had, in fact, been about to use her exact words. Why not, he asked. Nothing good ever happens when people split up. Have you never watched a film, like Ever? Hilda said, turning to him and putting her hand on her hips. It's like a creepy TV show when someone goes into a dark house but doesn't just turn all the lights on. The rule should be simple. Don't split up. Turn all the lights on. When you split up or bumble around in the dark, something awful always happens. Nellie nodded sagely. She was quite a fan of horror films, and this sounded like good advice. Well, there were some lights on in the rest of the factory, reasoned Murph, so we should be able to sort the lights out at least. Must be an emergency system. He turned back to the doors and scanned the walls on either side for light switches. He spotted them, almost hidden underneath layers of mashed up and stuck together goo. Clenching his teeth, Murph pushed his hand through the covering, which was dry and papery thin, and flicked all the switches down. There was a flicking, blinking noise as a few lights came on through the tower. But because they were hidden underneath layers of pulpy, stinky nest material, they only cast a pale, brownish light that made their way forward look even creepier, if anything. Okay, said Murph, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The lights are on. He paused, but we are going to have to split up, just for a bit, Hilda. Billy, you head down and see if you can locate where the rest of the school are being held. Mary, Nellie, you come with me. Let's see if we can find out where Wasp Guy's hanging out. All five looked at each other for a long moment. This was it. Then they separated and headed off along the gloomy, slopey, stinky passageways. Here and there, patches of real staircases beneath were visible, and Merv tried to walk on them wherever he could, but sometimes it was impossible to avoid stepping on the crushed debris that covered almost every surface. It made a papery crunching sound every time he moved. It was impossible to creep along silently. Whatever was waiting for them at the top of the tower would have plenty of warning that they were coming. Hilda and Billy crept down the other passageway, which was built around a spiral staircase that seemed to wind its way towards the base of the tower. As they neared the bottom, they could hear whistling, and as they peered round the final corner, they could make out a large figure pacing backwards and forwards. It was Mr. Flash. Behind him, they could see that a huge thick metal wall had been constructed across the middle of the large room at the bottom of the tower, with a door fashioned from iron bars in the centre. One of the bars was frosted with ice. Clearly someone had tried to use their capability to escape, but with no success. Another of the bars seemed to be splattered with soup. "That must be where they're keeping everyone," whispered Hilda, as they cowered at the corner of the corridor. "Okay," she went on, thinking fast. "So we all need to do is get past Mr. Flash and then get that door open." Just contemplating this made her let out a small whimper of fear. And not out of her mouth either, but this was no time to hesitate. She grabbed Billy's arm. "Come on, let's get in there and pop him." There's a picture for you to see of Mr. Flash standing guard. Mr. Flash saw them as soon as they rounded the corner. In his brainwashed state, he continued to believe that his primary function was to serve nectar, and like Mr. Drench, the mind control helmet had also apparently amplified his nastier side. "What the purple sprouting broccoli are you two doing here?" he roared at them. "I was expecting a proper rescue mission, not a pair of lame geese." "Good evening, Mr. Flash," replied Hilda, who had been taught that good manners should never be neglected. "Your eyes look, very striking." "Shut up, horse girl, and get in the cage with the rest of them," ordered the teacher. "Oh, I don't think so, Mr. Flash," began Billy, politely, summoning up his head-popping capability. But Mr. Flash was ready for him. He seemed to vanish, appearing suddenly behind them and bellowing so loudly that Billy inflated his own nose in shock. They spun to face the teacher, but he moved again so fast it was impossible to keep track of where he was. "Billy," Hilda said nervously out of the corner of her mouth. I can't," wailed Billy. "He's too fast for me to get a fix on him." Mr. Flash appeared on the far side of the room, roared with laughter, and produced a set of keys which he dangled from one meaty finger. "Did you really think you were going to defeat me? Get those keys and rescue this lot," he shouted like a sarcastic steam train. "Some have tried to escape already. I had to have a word with a couple of them." He gestured towards the bars, behind which they could just make out a prone figure lying on the hard floor. "Knocked out cold," Flash gloated, "just like your precious Mr. Superman." And suddenly he flung the keys to one side. "Come on then," he goaded them, as the keys tinkled on the concrete floor. "Let's see what Fat Finger Boy and Little Horsey Girl can do, shall we?" Before they could react, he was right in front of them, hopping from foot to foot and smashing his fists together. "I will enslave you for the glory of nectar," he laughed. "Keep him talking," whispered Hilda, as she concentrated hard. "What about?" hissed Billy. "Anything," she said urgently. "Sport, cheese, anything." What's your favourite bird of prey?" screeched Billy in a panic. "What?" Mr. Flash started hopping and looked at him furiously. "Mine's an eagle," said Billy eagerly, and proceeded to do his best impressions of one. "Cack, cack." "That's nothing like an eagle, idiotic boy," snapped Mr. Flash, forgetting that what he was supposed to be doing for a moment. He didn't notice the whining sound as away to his right 2 tiny horses appeared out of nowhere. "An eagle's much higher pitched than that, more like a caw, caw," suggested Billy, covering up the faint clicking sound as the first horse picked up the keys in its miniature teeth and cantered towards the bar. No, more like a screech," began Mr. Flash, but then he remembered what he was supposed to be doing. Destroying his master's enemies, not discussing birds. "Anyway, time to shut up. It's time to finish you two off. Like you ever stood a chance against me. 2 kids fighting against the mighty Mr. Flash." "Actually, Ian," said Hilda, "I'd rather think you'll find our odds have improved." She flicked her head towards the cage behind him. Flash turned just in time to see the doors swing open and the students, teachers of the school file out, each and every one looking directly at the man who had imprisoned them with an expression that said, "You're about to pay." "Bit of a rookie mistake, the old fling the keys away move, wouldn't you say?" continued Hilda. There was a moment of tense silence as Mr. Flash contemplated his situation. It was Billy who broke the deadlock. "Charge!" he suggested politely, inflating himself to block the entrance to the staircase. High above them, Murph, Mary and Nellie continued up the spiral passageway to Nectar's lair. Murph wondered what they were about to face. Mary and Nellie had seen Nectar when he attacked the school, but all he had to go on was their description. Crazy images flashed through his mind as the papery floor cracked underneath his feet. A wasp that could talk, a man who could fly, a normal wasp but 2 meters long, an inch-long man head with a wasp's body. Regardless of what Nectar was, Murph told himself he was dangerous and had managed to do some serious damage to their school teachers and students. They'd come too far to give up now, no matter how scared they were. At the final corner before the top of the tower, the passageway was blocked by the huge silhouette of a guard. The figure was lit from behind and cast a giant shadow. It was clear that Nectar had chosen the most beefy, the most enormous, impressive specimen he could to protect his inner lair. Murph, Mary and Nellie froze on the spot. "Who are the intruders?" they heard a peevish voice cry out in the distance. The huge silhouette moved slightly as the guard peered in their direction. "They are no one to fear, Lord Nectar," belched a deep voice. "It's a first year called Murph, and 2 is for his friends. I shall eliminate them." "Well, hurry up, Picnic." They heard the faint voice shout. The giant figure started to move down the passageway towards them, the crispy covering clicking and clacking under his enormous feet. "Uh-oh," whispered Murph. "Now what do we do?" "And who on earth is that?" "Stay calm," said Mary. "Let me do the talking." She raised her voice and spoke in a calm tone, as if trying to soothe an anxious cow. "Hello, you seem a reasonable chap. I want to make a deal with you. How about—" But there was to be no deal. The guard strained his huge muscles and cried out, "Defend Lord Nectar, activating capability." Murph and his friends waited, terrified. What capability could this beast have to have been chosen as Nectar's final guard? Super strength, breathing fire, spitting out rocks. Murph could just make out the figure was opening his mouth, bearing 2 rows of very large white teeth. All at once, there was a piercing, screeching noise. "It's Barry Talbot," Mary cried. "The boy who can make a screeching noise with his teeth." "Worst cape ever," said Murph grimly, sticking his fingers in his ears. Suddenly there was a flash and a bang. Barry flew off his enormous feet, hit the wall behind him and slumped in a heap on the floor. He was out cold. Mary and Murph turned round to see a very sheepish Nellie with a startled expression on her face. "Nellie!" exclaimed Murph, but then ran out of conventional words and just added, "Whoa. Sorry, it just sort of happened," squeaked Nellie. The noise was really, really annoying. "And besides, I'm sick of people treating us like useless ants. Plus, we haven't got time to mess around. We have a school to save." It was the longest speech she'd ever made by a factor of, well, a lot. She put her hands on her hips in the internationally recognised hero pose. "Wow, you go, girl," said Murph. "Don't ever say that again," Mary warned him. "You can't pull it off." The 3 of them stepped over the giant snoozing form of Barry Talbot, kicking the final mind control helmet from his head as they went and approached Nectar's command centre. Their feet were still sticking to the tacky, lick-infused floor as they climbed the final part of the staircase. They started to hear crackling, distant music. It sounded scratchy and old-fashioned and frankly unnerving. At the top of the tower, a set of wooden double doors stood slightly ajar. They pushed them open slowly and surveyed the round window-lined room at the top. It was lit with yellowish sunset light. The walls were plastered with Nectar's nesting materials, and they could see a few wooden cupboards and cabinets stuck in amongst the goo. An old-fashioned record player was the source of the creepy music, and right in the middle, sitting in a chair with his back to him, was the wasp himself. Nectar was softly singing along with his reedy voice on the old record. "Free, free, free, and busy as a bee. Oh, I mustn't grumble, always be humble. That makes me a bumble. I'm free, 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 and busy as a bee." That's the end of part A.